Okay. Adelaide, it looks like we're going to make some sauce for a green bean casserole.
Yes, I'm going to share with you one of the recipes that we use during the holidays. But since this is one of my family preferred ways of eating green beans, we eat this throughout the year. So I'm using today green beans from my garden that were frozen. I measured and thought about 8 cups. And for this green bean casserole, we improvised using a gravy recipe from the book 10 Talents, which we can share the recipe later. So it's a cashew milk gravy, and I just make the gravy here in the Vitamix blend. We'll go to the stove to thicken it, and we just mix it with the green beans. Basically, that's the recipe. So one thing that I noticed using this gravy recipe, I usually have to double it up because it's not enough sometimes to really soak the green beans. Even if you do 4 cups, I don't think it's enough. So I usually do 1.5 or double the recipe. So that's what I'm doing today. So we're gonna need 4 cups of water. And what I've done, and we're doubling up the cashew. I soak it for about an hour at home and rinsed it well. So we have a cup of cashews because I'm doubling the recipe, and we have 4 cups of water. 2 cups I'm going to add when I blend for blending the cashew, and the rationale of dividing is that you use the rest of the water to wash it, the Vitamix, so you don't lose any of the ingredients. So 1 tablespoon of onion powder. So since I'm doubling the recipe, I'm putting 2 tablespoons. And then the olive oil is optional, but my son, Johannes, always likes to add. Usually most of the time he's the one that makes this recipe at home. And 2 tablespoons of arrowroot powder. But since we're doubling up, I'm going to put 4.
So what's the difference between arrowroot powder, cornstarch, tapioca starch?
Oh, they're all thickeners, but I know that there are some people that are allergic to corn. So the arrowroot powder is a good, it's a good alternative.
Okay, great.
And I'm doing 2 tablespoons of Bragg aminos. You could use salt instead. The recipe says 1 teaspoon of salt instead, and then we'll blend it very smoothly. The Vitamix helps it to be very smooth.
Adelaide, I want to talk about a technique I just saw you use that I think is fantastic. When you lifted that up, you could tell how smooth you had it.
Yes.
I like that technique.
Yes, that's what I do. I usually, because the Vitamix does a good job in making it very smooth, but sometimes you don't know when there's still fragments. So that's why I lifted just to see. He's going to thicken this up for me while And the green beans that I use today, like I said, I froze it from my garden, but you can use canned green beans, or either you do at home or from the store, but just make sure you drain them really well so it doesn't get too soggy and the sauce doesn't get diluted. So what I do, I usually spray a pan and we make like lasagna style. You put a little bit of the sauce when it's thick on the bottom, and then we'll layer the green beans. And as soon as it's thick, we'll do that. I want to thank my helpers for helping to stir the sauce so it didn't burn. It's nice and thick, the cashew sauce. And the recipe, when I share the recipe with you, I'll put some tips there from the chef, from the 10 Talent Chef. You could add garlic, you could add mushrooms. I did something plain today just to demonstrate, but you can be creative. So I'll put just a little bit on the bottom of the sauce and put the green beans, the thawed green beans. Then I'll put a little bit more of the sauce. And you can see that the sauce is very smooth. It's not, does not have a lot of, there is no pieces of cashews. It's very, very, very smooth. So the Vitamix did a great job. So you usually serve this for Thanksgiving. You will bake on a 350 for about 45 minutes to an hour. It keeps well in the fridge. I've never tried to freeze this because I think we eat fast enough. And I have one of the ears, I found some gluten-free onion rings, onion covered rings, just to add a little crunch for fun. On a day-to-day we don't do that. But just to help garnish, because after it's baked, you're gonna see that it looks a little bit sad on top, and it seems that it calls for something to give that nice presentation. So this is the green bean casserole that we use for our holidays. We're just going to bake this and show you a little bit later.
Looks wonderful. Can't wait to try it. Okay, Adelaide, this looks like our green bean casserole finished. We put it in the oven at 350 for about
50 minutes.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's give this a try. I love the texture. This looks good.
And again, you guys can put a garnish that you choose.
You guys are going to love this. This is good. Yeah, you could put the onion rings on it. Yeah, that's really good. Thank you. Appreciate you guys coming and doing that for
Yeah,
us.
sure.
So Janette, tell me about yourself. What's your career?
So I'm a nurse practitioner.
Oh, okay.
I work with the radiation oncology team at Dayton Physicians.
Nice.
I've been there for 4 years, and I love it.
Okay. I think you have some children.
I do.
You
I
okay?
have 2 boys. They're teenagers.
Oh, then you know how to cook.
Yeah.
All right.
Sort of.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And what does your family like to do for fun?
So we like to hang out together, and we like to go and do outdoor activities like hiking, kayaking, whitewater rafting.
Ooh, you guys kayak and white. Okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, and camping, tent camping.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're going on the church camp out?
I have not. I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
I'm not sure what our plans are, so I'm not sure.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Kayaking is one thing I've got. In fact, I'm going to go look and see if there's some sales this weekend because kayaking sounds like fun. All right. This afternoon, we're making a cranberry sauce.
Yes, it's actually a very super easy cranberry sauce. It
Good.
actually only 3 ingredients.
That's great.
Cranberry, fresh orange juice, and honey. And you can actually use maple syrup if you want to make it vegan.
Okay. All right. Show us how it's done.
Okay, so I'm just gonna pour in here. Is it hot?
Oh, somebody turned that down. Okay, go ahead.
Medium temperature.
And it looks like you found some frozen cranberries.
Yes.
Excellent.
So frozen cranberries are actually fresher than the fresh cranberries because they freeze dry them right when they get them out of the tree. So
Interesting.
So
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, we're gonna put this in here. I do like to thaw them out a little bit, but I didn't really have time today,
They're
and I
a little
totally,
bit thawed.
yeah, I totally forgot about it. So, you know, they might
Okay.
still be a little bit frozen.
So how often do you probably make this recipe?
Once a year.
Once a year. Do
Pretty
you
much.
use it for Thanksgiving or Christmas?
We actually have the same kind of meal for Christmas and Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
so-
understand totally. Yep.
Yeah,
yep.
so I guess I make it twice a year.
Okay.
Right?
One for each. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
And then this is fresh orange juice. It's 3/4 of a cup, and I'm just gonna add it on here. And okay, there's that. So we're gonna use nice little squeeze here. And you can actually add more than half a cup. I just typically use, let me see about.
We like the way she measures. She measures like I measure.
Okay,
About that much.
yeah, about that much. But then you could taste it and see if it needs more. You know, it's kind of like to taste, depending on how sweet you like it.
It looks like this is finishing up. Those cranberries have popped a little bit. And what are we trying to achieve here?
So yes, we want them to pop. We want it to thicken. So it's about probably 10 to 15 minutes. And it looks like it's pretty much done.
We're pretty much where we want it to be.
Yep.
All
And
right.
now we're just going to completely let it cool down.
Okay.
And we can refrigerate, and we may need a
Yep.
pot or
Yep.
holder. Or
We'll just.
and then refrigerate it and use it whenever our meal is ready.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Looks good. I'm looking forward to tasting. Let's see here. See if I can do this without burning my mouth. I know it's supposed to cool.
Yeah, it might be a little hot.
It could be hot. Honey can be really hot. But I love the flavor.
Is it a little tart or?
Just a little bit.
Okay.
And what's nice about this is I never stop to think about how you described the frozen cranberries are fresher, and that makes sense because and you can taste that in this cranberry sauce with the frozen one. Thank you. This is
Great.
awesome.
You're welcome.
All right. What holiday is complete without some sweet potatoes? What are you making us?
I'm making a sweet potato crumble casserole.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Can't wait to try that.
All right, so I got this recipe from a favorite food blog I follow called Oh She Glows. And to make things just a little quicker, I went ahead and peeled the sweet potatoes. Takes me a while to do that. And I went ahead and boiled them. So you want to do 4.5 to 5 pounds of sweet potatoes, which is about 4 to 5 sweet potatoes. And then you want to just boil them till the fork just kind of goes through easily. So these are already mashed up. And after you do that, we got our oven going at 375, and we're just going to grease this casserole pan. My assistant, Courtney, will be doing that. So in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and prepare the crumble topping. So this calls for, let me look here. It's 1 1/3 cup of pecan halves. So we're going to go ahead and put it in this bowl right here. And I've already got those in there. I kind of broke some of them up a little bit more. Okay, so I am going to add a cup of rolled oats. This is for the crunchy topping. So I've already got the pecans in here. It's 1 1/3 cup of pecans. And then you're adding a cup of rolled oats. And what we did was just put this in the blender for a little bit, so it's kind of broke up all the oats to make it a little bit finer. And then we're going to add 1/3 cup of almond meal or almond flour. And we're going to do a teaspoon of cinnamon. which I think the cinnamon's about gone. I love sweet potato casserole. It always makes me think of Thanksgiving. And sweet potatoes are really nutritious for you. So my grandma, she would always make them for me, but she hated them. So I got to eat them and she didn't like them, but they're really good for you. They're good for healthy vision, they support your immune system, and they're good for your gut health. So I did a teaspoon of cinnamon, and then I'm gonna add 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt. And then 2 tablespoons of coconut oil. And then 2 tablespoons of vegan butter. And then we're going to do 2.5 tablespoons of maple syrup. And we'll just kind of do half of this one here. And, you know, if you go over or under a little bit, it won't make that big of a difference. Oops. So you just want to mix this all up till it's kind of a crumbly texture. My bowl's a little small, so it's easily to make it fall out here. But you want your butter to be kind of soft too, so it'll mix up easier, and the coconut oil. So coconut oil at room temperature is pretty solid until it starts getting warm, and it'll turn into liquid. All right, so that's looking pretty good. Okay, so we're gonna set that aside. So here's our sweet potatoes. We're gonna add some butter and coconut oil in here too, just to make it a little creamier and smoother. So we're gonna add 1.5 tablespoons of butter. And then we're gonna do 1.5 tablespoons of coconut oil. And usually you don't even have to worry about heating this up ahead of time because they're hot, but mine have kind of cooled off a little bit because I did it ahead of time. And then we're gonna add a little more maple syrup to sweeten it. We're gonna do 2.5 tablespoons of this as well. And then we're gonna do a teaspoon. So this is where we kind of add more seasonings. So we're gonna do a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Here's my teaspoon right there. And then 3/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. That one's almost empty. I used that other one, but if you can get some out of it. All right. Oh, that was a little extra. All right, and then 1/8 teaspoon of nutmeg. Some of my butter isn't quite melted in here, but Just keep smishing it around. I love the smell of nutmeg. Okay, and then a half a teaspoon of salt. Or it says to taste. So after we get that in there, we'll see what this tastes like. And then put it in the pan. All right, so we're gonna dump this all in.
This
And it can be kind of hard because, you know, not all sweet potatoes are the same. Some are huge. The ones at the store were massive, so you might have to adjust how much seasoning you put in to how big your potatoes are. Okay. We'll just smush that all down, and then we'll add the crumble topping. Which looks like a lot, but it's so good. Okay, so we'll just smooth that all out, and then this goes in the oven for, let's see how long it says. It's on the next 16 to 23 minutes. I like mine a little crispier, so I'll probably do 23 minutes.
Let's take a taste. So we got that nice crunchy top with sweet potatoes on the bottom. And it's
Still pretty hot.
pretty warm, just out of the oven. Oh yeah, that topping makes it. That is excellent. Y'all got to try this. This is fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rhona, what have we got here? It looks like we're getting ready for the holidays.
Thanksgiving,
All right.
turkey and dressing. This is a recipe that I have made for many years through my kids growing up, but I got started at it when I was working at Andrews University, and we had turkey and dressing from time to time. And so really I don't have a recipe, but we'll try to get one made up while I'm making it. So what I will start with, normally I don't, for myself, I don't use oil, but you can use vegetable oil. This is olive oil, mild. I'm just going to put a little bit of oil in the pan. And I have about a cup of onions. It was a half of a medium onion. It's almost the whole cup, but not quite. And then I have celery. It is a cup, and I used 2 stalks of celery. I will just saute this briefly.
This is one of those recipes, I'm guessing, that a little more, a little less onion, celery, not going to make a big deal.
Yeah, it's not going to make a big deal.
It really has to do with how well you like it.
Right.
And now I know at our family, we like a lot of celery, so if you get a little extra in, it's not going to hurt a thing.
Yeah. So I have here, this is what I've used, is the Pepperidge Farm herb seasoning stuffing. And I really like this because it doesn't have the high fructose corn syrup in it. So I'm going to just go ahead and pour this in. Oops, I don't want that in there. 1 bag of the herb seasoned stuffing. And we always did the regular bread along with cornbread, so I like to get a bag of cornbread to go in with the rest of it. I'm just going to stir this a little bit, get the celery mixed in there, onions. And I just follow the recipe, the amount of water it calls for on the package, 2 cups for each bag. So I have here 4 cups of water. Is it working?
I think so. Now, does this need to cook any, or are you just getting it good and mixed up?
I like to cook it a little bit.
A little bit? Okay.
Yes. Now, at Andrew's, we always put eggs in it. And I did it for a while until I decided I wanted to go vegan. And I found it didn't make much of a difference not to have the egg in it. So if you want eggs, you can put eggs in with it or leave it out. So what I got was the roll of Worthington meatless turkey and thawed it out and sliced it. And we'll take the slices before I do that, I want to spray my pan with a little oil. How does this work? Oh. Okay. That helps it not to stick while it's in the oven. Just put the dressing in the slice of turkey. And then make the U shape.
Turkey and dressing tacos.
Yes. One year I decided I wanted to try making this with walnuts in the dressing. I took just a portion of it and put walnuts in because I love walnuts in a lot of dishes.
What'd you think?
It discolored everything.
Okay.
So I don't do it anymore.
The one thing we have used is almonds.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
That would be good.
We use almonds in our dressing. Yep. All right.
Now when we get ready to bake this, we put a little water in here to keep it from, steam it and...
Do you cover it?
No.
Okay.
You don't
so
cover
you
it.
just put a little water in the bottom of it, bake it at 350
Yes, 350.
for about...
Half an hour, 45 minutes.
Okay.
I don't think an hour. I think that would be too long.
Yep, I think it would get too crispy. Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Now we'll make a gravy to go over it.
Right.
All righty. Okay, we're going to make some gravy, and you use it for on top of your turkey and stuffing, but you could probably use it for other things.
Mashed potatoes.
Okay.
Stuffing, if you just have plain stuffing.
Yep. All right, let's see how you do it.
I have 1/4 cup of flour here. Now you can make gravy with oil or just plain with flour, but today we'll do the flour and oil. It's a little easier doing it with oil. It's easier to not make it lumpy. So I'm doing 1/4 cup of oil, 1/4 cup of flour. Mix it. Get all the flour mixed in with the oil. This is what you call a roux. Make your roux. Okay, now we want it to boil a little bit before we pour any water in it. Let it bubble a little bit. I have made gravy without oil because I like to use as less oil as possible, but it is a little more tricky to not have it lumpy. And the oil does add a little, make it more flavorful. So here we have it bubbling, and now we want to add our water. This is a pretty good consistency for gravy.
So you just added water until you got the consistency you wanted.
If it gets too thick, then I'll add a little more water. For seasonings, since this is going with turkey and dressing, I'm going to use the McKay's chicken instant broth and seasoning.
This is a vegetarian chicken
Broth, yes.
seasoning. Now, would you put this on your turkey and dressing after you baked your turkey and dressing?
I would bake it, the turkey and dressing, for maybe a half an hour to 40 minutes, and then put the gravy on for 5 minutes in the oven.
Okay. So you put the gravy on the very last thing.
Yes.
Okay. This looks great. All right. Bruce, it looks like we got a couple of gadgets here, but we're also making what else?
We're making pumpkin pie, and it's a family recipe that I've been making for over 26 years. And it was in the family long before that, and I'm 70 years old, so it's been a while.
And you also made it so that it's more plant-based than the original, I think you told me.
Right, when I get a recipe, one of the first things I try to do is chiptize it, make it more plant-based. And so on this one, we are not using eggs, we're using flour instead, and instead of milk, we're using almond milk. I still haven't gotten cutting out the sugar on it yet, but
that's something you can work on.
Yeah.
But we're doing this for holidays. So show us how to make pumpkin pie.
Okay, one of the first things I want to point out is a trick that I started with my mom and dad, and that is when you go to turn your oven on to do anything on your oven, turn the range light on. That way, you look at that and you know, hey, I've got the oven on, I need to go check and make sure the burner's off. Because there's my mom and dad and my wife's mom sometimes would have the burner on, and this would be an easy way to indicate that the burner's on. But we won't be doing that today because we're using the hot plate. Now, this is half of the recipes that I use on a regular basis. It's Chef Bruce's favorite recipes. And what I do is I've got them divided out in a section, and I have a holiday section. For 26 years now, I've been making the holiday meal, and I use chafing dishes. And so as the stuff comes off the stove and the oven, it goes into a chafing dish, and then by the time the meal is there, it is hot. So today we're going to go to my pumpkin pie recipe. And I just discovered this morning. This is a pot holder and a lid holder. And it's a variable height lid holder, so you can got a tall pot, a lid, or that. You just put that on there. You also have on this other side is your spoon rest. You can also use this. You can also use this for holding your phone. Or, as I discovered today, it makes a good rest to put my cookbook on. One of the first things that you'll do is we use Marie Callender's pie crust, and I flute the edges myself. So what I do is I put it in the oven for less than 3 minutes. And that's why you need a timer, because you can get distracted and forget that you have it in there. So we'll just put this in the oven for 3 minutes or less until it starts to glisten. Put my reminder there. What we also do now is I have my flour already measured out. Now, one thing that was hard to do today is that I normally make a double recipe at a time. And so today I'm having to do it in half. So I'm having to look over here a little bit more to see what I have. Now this is a 1/4 cup of pastry whole wheat flour. I used to use white, but as I try to get it more and more healthy as we go along. Now you say, okay, now whole wheat pastry flour is a little brown to start with. How do you tell when you've got it a little bit of brown? Well, I always compare it with some that has not been browned yet. So what we'll do is we'll do a comparison, lift it up, and say, okay, this is a little bit brown. While that is browning, we'll go ahead and open the pumpkin. Start with one of my favorite types of can openers. It's one that cuts below the lip. It's made by OXO. I've tried several other brands, and this is the one that works the best. Has a little bit of grippers on the side so you can just pull the lid off. I don't know if you can see this. Is that showing up pretty good? But it's cut the lid off. So this is, you've got a smooth edge there. So when you go to use your spatula, you're not going to be cutting chunks out of your spatula. How's the pie crust looking? Is it looking oily? Okay. Here, bring it out and put it on this hot pad. My wife is so much younger than me, but this month we've been dating 50 years. And she's been a great helper. And she calls herself the sous chef. Now, I'm going to stir this. Is this in camera? Okay. Oh, I always use Libby's if I can. Pure pumpkin. Now I'll go along and now, let me get my other glove. Shut that off. Set it again for 3 minutes. Don't want the flour to overcook. So then I go along and I'll flute the edge, giving it a more of a homemade look. This was the Moss family, based on the Moss family recipe, and I've changed it a little bit since then, but my mom was making this when I was growing up. Starting to get a little brown. You got to watch it because from little to a lot goes quickly when it starts going. Now when I measure my spices, I like to use a plate to measure them on. And so let's say I'm going to use the cinnamon here. I'm doing it over here so that any spillage will be not all over the countertop, and when I go to scrape it, and that way you don't have as much of a mess when you finish. Now this is the way I have my measuring cups in the drawer. So I just have to grab this and bring it out and put it at the counter where I'm working, and then I don't have to be going to the drawer every time I want to use it. I also like these long, narrow ones, and I look for ones that have flat bottom. And the reason I like the long, narrow ones is that here's a teaspoon, which most rounded ones won't fit into your jars. This will fit into the jar itself. My niece and nephew referred to me as Inspector Gadget because I have all the different types of equipment, and I see something else, I go ahead and get it. Like yesterday we were at Jungle Gyms, and I think we ended up walking out with about $50 worth of new kitchen gadgets. I also like these because a lot of times I have my spices or herbs are down deep in a canister, and this is easy to get them out. I also use this a lot. Half cup 1/8 cup and 1/4 cup. Okay, it is beginning to look brown. I don't know if you can see that. It's a little bit browner than what is there. All right. I'm going to set that aside. I don't like to add that until I get all the other ingredients mixed in, because the hot flour will melt the sugar. Okay, now on the ingredients, we have, for the single pie, we have 1/3 cup of light brown sugar and 1/3 cup of white sugar, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. I use the glass jar. It seems to have a different flavor than the canned jar. And 1/8 teaspoon of nutmeg, and 1/16 teaspoon of cloves and ginger, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Now, if you ever wondered what a 1/16 is, it is a dash, and I have that with these small measuring spoons here. We have one that's 1/32 is a sprinkle, 1/16 is a dash, and 1/8 is a pinch. Well, I went ahead and mixed all these together already. I've got my sugar and cinnamon and everything in here. So we'll put that in here. And this is my brown sugar. I like to add the brown sugar and then mash it up. Make sure it doesn't have lumps in it before I add all the rest of the ingredients, and before I add the liquid. And it's easier to get your lumps out when you have it dry before you add the liquid. And that's pretty good. So now I will add my flour. And I'll mix that in. Which is time to show off another gadget that I have. I have found this whisk. It's a Xylus whisk. If you notice, the end doesn't come together. So you don't have your things that you're whisking clumping as much so that you can't get it out as easily. Now, a lot of times lately I say, well, if you're going to add liquid to your pie and then you're going to boil it down or bake it down, why not add less liquid? And if you want a more even texture on your pie, you may want to go the full liquid. But this, let's see, I did shake this. Let me shake it again. It's almond milk. Almond milk has a tendency to separate a little bit more. And the recipe calls for 12 ounces or 1 can, and so, which is about a cup and a half, but I'm going to go about a cup and a quarter, a little bit more than a quarter in between there. Now, the next step is the most important step that was the important step since my childhood. I'll add just a little bit more milk to this. My wife gets after me because some recipes I'll just go by consistency, and she's there measuring it and says, "How do you do that?" Well, there, that's nice and smooth. Give me a spoon, please. Yeah, next drawer over. As a kid, this was the most important part. And since this doesn't have eggs, you can have as much as you want. Kathy? I'm trying to get my wife used to this step. Nice blend of spices.
Delicious, dear.
Now, we take our pie crust, it looks like we're going to have some that we can use for sampling, huh? My mother eventually got to just making this without the crust. In other words, more like a pudding. Now, I've got one more gadget. Where's that ring? In the box, right here in front of me. I'll put the pie in now on 400 degrees for 10 minutes. Okay, Kathy, you want to open the oven? Now, after 10 minutes, we lower the temperature down to 325 and bake it for a half hour more. But at the 10-minute mark, I put one of these rings on. I found that these metal aluminum rings are the best. Some of the others tend to fall off the pie, and the silicone ones just seem hard to use. But that way, the crust, after 10 minutes, is stiff enough that it will hold this up and not mash it down. Now, another gadget that I use is an oven puller and pusher. So you put that in and you hook it on the oven, and you can pull the pie out without having to reach into the hot oven to get it. And it also is another way that I tell that the pie is done, because I take it and hook this on the shelf, and I'll shake the pie. Alex, come around here and I'll show you what I'm doing. I'll take the pie and shake it, and if it jiggles, it's not ready. When it stops jiggling, the pie is solid enough in the middle. Which brings me to one more gadget. This is the spatula, and it's also by OXO. When you go into the pie, it bends, so then you can go underneath the pie and scoop it up without having it being pulled apart while you're doing so. And that is the pumpkin pie recipe that is the Batchelor and Moss family pie recipe for nigh unto 70 years.
All right.
Here is a finished product, and when I bring it out of the oven, just to make sure that no insects get to it, I like this handy camping device, and I use one of these metal trays, and I hook that underneath the edge, and there it can cool on the counter.
Okay. Is it cool enough to try?
It's cool enough to try. This one is.
All right. Ah, nice texture. Okay. Is it going to work on a slim
Uh,
piece?
Do a little bit wider there. Yeah.
Get a wider piece out to begin with. Oh, good. Kathy's getting us some plates.
Let's cut one more right down here about the width of this.
So, do you make this just for holidays?
My birthday, if my sister's in town, she has it for her birthday. When my dad was alive, we had it for his birthday. And any other time that we can
And squeeze
excuse.
it in. So, Thanksgiving and Christmas?
Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Okay.
I've had people say that they won't eat any other pie, but they will eat that one, pumpkin pie.
All right. Good enough. Let's see. I'm going to get that little sliver here. Oh yeah, I can see why they don't eat. The spice blend is perfect. Very good. Thank you, Bruce. That's awesome.
Okay.